Okay. It says we're live. Hop on YouTube and make sure.
All of the standard checks.
Yes. All right. Okay, so everything looks good. I'm going to share out to Twitter real fast. Okay. All right. So, do we want to give it another minute? Let some people pop in.
Yeah. Give people a little bit of a chance to find their way in.
For sure. So, tell everybody how you've been, what you've been up to.
This month, I feel has just been super crazy. I haven't been doing a lot, unfortunately. Been kind
Has
of
work
quiet.
been crazy then?
Yeah. So I'm trying
It's
to
kind of that time of year for you, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and we just had some major launch stuff, so we're starting a whole new cycle.
Oh,
which is
yeah.
crazy.
That makes a big difference.
And I am adjusting to time zones because for most of last week, I was on the Taiwanese time zone.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
going
that
to
was
make
fun.
a big difference.
Yeah. But I see that you've been putting out some interesting content.
I've been filming a lot more in my car recently. Why? I don't know. But I don't know. I guess it feels more casual, a little less formal, and I like that format for myself. I feel like I speak more freely, I guess you could say. And, just talking about book buying habits in general, how I've cut back on what I'm bringing in. But I'm running out of space in my library, and I don't have a small library, guys. Like, I have to cut back somewhere.
Well, and you just
it is
recently
not on this
redid
particular
it.
series we're going to be talking about, though. So now that we're kind of a couple minutes into this, today we are discussing 4 volumes of Requiem of the Rose King. Please ignore the tassels. I just used any bookmark I could find to mark things I wanted to talk about in this live stream. So this one might be longer than some of our previous ones because there is a lot to dissect in these volumes. This is basically like the meat and the core of Richard's story in this series, and it's going to be amazing. I'm very much looking forward to this discussion. As y'all know, my host, April, we've been doing this book club. What is this, the end of our 3rd year? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's trippy to think about.
Uh-huh.
So October will be our last month for this year. And then we always take November and December off because it's just too crazy to figure out schedules. And everybody else is so busy that most people don't have time to throw an extra read in. So we always take that break. So I just want to remind you guys, after October, we are going to take our break for November and December, and then we'll come back in January. We haven't talked about anything for January yet, so we'll figure that out when it gets closer. But in the meantime, we're going to be discussing Requiem of the Rose King. This will be full spoilers. We always talk full spoilers. So if you have not seen one of our streams about Requiem of the Rose King thus far, I do have the first one linked in the description. So check that out. Check that one first because we do a small non-spoilery part at the beginning so you can kind of get a feel for what the series is about. And then we move into spoilers. So that might be a better place to start than this video. So we're going to put that out there real quick. So April, why don't you give your initial thoughts on these volumes? And then I'll go into all of my dissections and bookmarks and things.
All of your marks. Mm-hmm. Okay. Brief overview. Last 4 volumes that we just did. We ended up in a place where I'm finally familiar with the history of Richard because we finally have the boys in the tower and where all of that leads to. So I was kind of excited that we're finally to the point where I recognize the storyline. I do have to say, though, the last 2 volumes, I think I liked more than the first 2 volumes that we read in this set.
I would agree with that. There are some big things that happen, especially in 10, but then it kind of takes a bit of a dip. 12 and 13 are so packed with information.
Yeah. I think the biggest reason why I struggled a little bit with those first two is because we have the development of Buckingham and Richard.
Right.
And that new dynamic between the two. And the way it started out, it just, I know Buckingham is using Richard, and through the process of using Richard, things start to develop in a direction that even Buckingham didn't anticipate. But the way it is forced upon Richard made me extremely uncomfortable. And because of how like messed up mentally Richard is, he kind of just keeps going with it because he's never really had that warmth before. They keep talking about it as a warmth because both of them are messed up in various different ways. So there's not
at the same time, that reference, I caught it more on this second read than I did on the first, but Richard has experienced that warmth before. They experienced that with Henry early on.
Right.
And so with the very end of 13, that warmth and Henry kind of comes full circle in a way that I wasn't expecting. And it was just like, oh, where's it going to go from here? But we'll get into that later. Okay. So let's start with 10. There aren't as many in 10 and 11, but 12 and 13, we've got a lot to figure out. So one thing that I want to bring up in 10 that is mentioned is that when the current king dies, he's reunited with his kingmaker. And I just thought that moment was really just kind of sweet. And it didn't have to be in the story, but I love that Ayakano took the time to do that because they really were close. And the king was admitting at that time, he's like, I really should have listened to you. It doesn't change the fact that I love her. She doesn't love me, but I should have listened to you better. And it was just a really great thing. Okay, the next thing is as Buckingham and Richard are kind of figuring out themselves, we have this moment where Richard is basically forced to admit that they want the crown. Buckingham pushes and forces them to admit it. Because without admitting it, Buckingham didn't feel comfortable moving forward because he found out about Richard's duality and he didn't want to take that risk unless Richard really wanted it. So I do appreciate that Buckingham pressed for that piece of information, but at the same time, it did feel overly forced. So yeah, I totally see where you're saying that.
Well, it's just the fact, the manner in which he forces it. Because I have this uncomfortable place where when relationships are started with someone forcing themselves upon somebody else, there's just a control there that I just
it's a power dynamic that isn't safe.
Yeah, and I understand why Buckingham wants Richard to admit this because it is something that can be used against him. And if Richard can't let go of that, which comes into play later with Richard's mom when she gets brought into all of this,
right,
finally able to let go of all that, none of this could happen. But the fact that Buckingham put Richard in this very vulnerable state in which he really doesn't have any other option and nowhere else to go. I think that's this whole series in a nutshell too. You see this kind of play with all
Richard
of the characters.
Is a ping pong ball who's been forced to play for so many people. And I have to be honest, I do think Buckingham manipulates that the most and in the most like underhanded and conniving way. So yes, I have feelings about that. But another moment I marked is the moment where Elizabeth realizes what Richard's trying to do. And, then moving forward to the fact that it's only the two princes and she really is kind of getting moved out of the way. And it's being done on purpose. Watching her fall apart and watching the way the art style changed as she was continuing to fall apart was so well done by Ayakano. Like, hands off on the use of like shadows and light to emphasize how crazy they've gone because their world is falling apart. It's
you can
like,
see the madness in her eyes, which
exactly. You can see the madness in her eyes, in the smile on her face. Like every little piece matters. So moving on to 11. I am going to try to go through this quickly because we try to not keep these overly long. First off, I love this cover. The coloring on this cover is some of my favorite, and I love the art for Catesby in general.
Agreed.
So 11 is a very Catesby heavy volume, and Catesby isn't necessarily like a part of history as far as I remember. Maybe they were, I don't remember. But Catesby has been at the side of Richard since Richard was small, and so Catesby has this big pull towards Richard and knows the duality of Richard and thinks no one else will understand. And when they start to find out that Buckingham understands and knows that side of Richard, they start to almost feel threatened in their position. And I really liked how that was played out. Okay, so we have to talk about the thing with the priest. I have all sorts of thoughts about the thing with the priest. Because basically, Richard offers whatever this priest wants to them for, quote unquote, denying their God, if it was a false God. And what Richard didn't expect is that the priest would want them. And that was so uncomfortable. And it's not supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to feel Richard's discomfort. And I think, as much as I hate to say it, it was depicted in a way where you felt just as uncomfortable for Richard as Richard felt in that moment. And I don't like saying that it was well done, but it was. It's really hard to say that any other way.
Yeah, I mean, in it, I'm going to keep coming back to this. It is an interesting play of what the priest did versus what Buckingham did. Because essentially they kind of did the same thing. They just did it in a different fashion.
Where the priest was very like blatant and forward.
And he saw the deadness in his eyes. Whereas Buckingham added a warmth to it. And I think that's why Richard didn't question it or fear it quite the same way as when the priest did it.
Right. And then we have the moment where like Catesby basically comes in and swears himself after Richard and Buckingham have been having a moment. And I appreciated the vulnerability that Richard showed in front of Catesby to show the kind of relationship that her and Buckingham that they were having with Buckingham. I had said that. Pronouns are hard some days. Today's one of those days. But I do appreciate that Richard's trust in Catesby didn't change just because Buckingham came into the picture. And that's saying something for Richard, because Richard doesn't hold many people close. And I thought that was just such a nice thing.
Well, and Catesby walks the same line that Richard does with duality, but instead of with gender, it's with nationality. It's with his skin tone. He knows what it means
because
to be
very clearly he is not of Northern European descent like everybody else. And then obviously in 11, we run into Mother Dearest and all of Mother Dearest's thoughts and the whole dynamic there. You had mentioned the mother coming into the picture, so why don't you take this for a minute and then we'll come back to it.
Yeah, because we have a moment where we have the witch and the former queen. I guess she's still technically
I think that
queen at this
happens
point.
in 12.
Yeah. Well, I think Mother tells the secret, I think, in 11. And so then they play with it in 12.
Right.
Or something like that. The timeline gets all wibbly wobbly on me.
Well, yeah, when we're doing multiple volumes at a time, obviously some things will kind of move back and forth.
Yeah, because they send Richard's mother over because they don't know why, but for whatever reason, Richard has a very weird relationship with his mom, and they're trying to use that to kind of usurp Richard's power. And so mom comes, calls Richard out, tries to bring out that demon side, tries to kill Richard. But then you see that moment in which Buckingham pulls back and says, hey, you
Don't
remember
let
all
her
this
do
that
this
we've been
to you.
talking about? This is the moment. And then
Right.
so this is when Richard fully decides to let go of what his mother has done to them and just kind of accept their nature and make a very visual point of that to
Right. And
mom.
that visual stuff all starts to happen in like 12 and 13. So I did mark a part in 12. Yes, we're moving on to 12. Showing like Elizabeth's madness. Like this image is such a depiction of she is losing it. Like she is just so far gone at this point. And this is when she's pitted her own son against his cousin. Like it's so messed up. Like beyond messed up. And it's just so crazy. And through all of this, Richard's wife, Anne, is invited back to the palace. And Richard tries to share the same bed with Anne and can't. They aren't comfortable letting themselves be that vulnerable with Anne.
Right.
And, you know, in a lot of ways that makes sense. And then we have our masked hidden Henry out there killing boars and things. And yeah, it's so crazy. So yeah, I need to talk about chapter 53, at least the first part of it for a minute. Because it's all about the woods of madness and just this whole like manic pixie dream moment where we're in, you know, there are masks, it's a masquerade, everything's different and strange. It is just, it felt very Midsummer Night's Dream to me, and I loved that. You know, bringing in another Shakespeare just for a minute, I was just all for it. Like it was.
Well, I think you start to feel those Shakespearean roots that all of this is based off of, just in that section.
So much
and
more.
Even later in a lot of those masked scenes that we get in even volume 13. So yeah, I totally agree. Midsummer's Night Dream came to mind, and then all of those Shakespearean references, and remembering
and it's all about
this
the
is
hunt
Shakespeare.
At that point, because then we have the masked Henry, who's been hired to kill Richard in this hunt, and how Henry turns and protects Richard instead of killing them. And that whole moment just, I'm going to talk about it more after I talk about 13, but I do think that's going to play more into how things are going to go. And then during the hunt, we have this moment where this Elizabeth has pitted Anne against Richard, trying to get Anne to kill Richard. But at this point, Anne stands up for herself, and we love to see it. And we finally see the official fall of Elizabeth in every way, where her sons don't even live with her anymore, and they're not even legitimate. They can't claim the throne. So at this point, that's when we move on to 13 and
the rise of King Richard.
Yes. And, you know, they talk about putting on a play and all these kinds of things. And it was just so well put together. And then we have Richard basically trying to get the kingdom to validate them as king in a very interesting way. You know, it's been touted throughout the kingdom that Richard's a demon and all of these things. Richard comes out all dressed in white. Everybody's like, oh, an angel. And they use all of the words to convince them that they deserve to be king. And then we have the crowning of King Richard, which I have to show this art because it is magnificent. Like, ugh, so much. I love it so very much. And then, it's in 13 that Richard tries to share a bed with Anne and it doesn't go well. That's when it happened.
Yeah,
For some
because at
reason, I
that
thought it
point,
was 12.
because she sees Catesby and Richard coming out of the same bedroom together.
Buckingham.
And no, it was Catesby.
Oh, that is right.
Buckingham
Okay,
had run. Yeah.
that's right.
So she starts to question, like, well, why isn't that available to me? I don't
Mhm.
understand. And then all of those thoughts that she had with her previous husband come up, that Richard is a woman. And then through this, she tries to figure out the truth and ends up dressing Richard as a woman.
Right, I was gonna get to that. Like,
Yeah.
through the masquerade that is Richard's coronation party,
Mm-hmm.
here she is with Richard in female garb, and she's just like so pretty. And she's like jealous. It's cute. And then we have the moment where we find out the person kind of in charge of the play at the first coronation for Richard is actually the Earl of Richmond. And he ends up killing off some of the players from the play to kind of cause all sorts of mischief and problems. And it's just so interesting because I wonder what that's really going to mean in future. And then also we have Buckingham in this, or who we feel, yeah, it is Buckingham. That's right. We do see his face
Mm-hmm.
in this like devil horned head mask to take Richard away. And then we get to the end of 13, where Buckingham asks Richard to call them by their real name, Henry Stafford. And then the last panel is our real Henry. And I'm like, what the crap?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. We have come
It's like, okay,
in a circle.
what's the deal with these Henrys? What does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, by the way. And what is that going to mean for future volumes? Because at this point, I have a feeling Richard's going to panic and back out of whatever's happening right now. Because Richard is going to feel overwhelmed with Henry.
Right.
In all of its forms.
Yeah, because it was just the wrong place, the wrong time to remind all of that up together, especially since we had that one brief moment.
They're at the
with
same
Henry.
house.
Yeah.
Where Richard was hiding with Henry. It's the same freaking house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And the fact that even though Richard has seen Henry multiple times, but still believes him to be dead.
Right. And
so
the fact that he's floating around acting very not dead, but has no memory of who they are.
Right.
But feels this need to protect Richard. And it's just, it's so interesting. I just can't. It's so good. Oh, so what do you think is going to happen from here? Well, I mean, obviously, Richard's going to die. Like, we know Richard dies. That's what history tells us in the War of the Roses.
He doesn't have a very long reign, if I remember correctly. Because
so the question is, how long are they going to drag out Richard's reign? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, and you also got to wonder, at one point, Buckingham went to see the witch to talk about if Richard can actually make a child.
Right.
And we didn't get the
answer.
The full answer of what all of that means and how that's all going to come into play. I just thought that was an interesting little side quest that happened, and how all of that is going to play in, or how that affected, or how that answer affected how Buckingham is treating Richard's son. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that had a major play. I don't know.
I have almost done this so many times. It's not even funny. Because, man, like, I hate that we're current with Japan because it takes forever for the volumes to come out. But at the same time, like, it's so good that I can't help it.
Uh-huh. Want to know what happens next? Even though technically I can probably sort of put together if I went and looked at the actual history of all of this.
Right. Like, we could go look at history to see, like, the technical pieces of what happens, of course.
But
But
there's an art
there's
element that's
such an
amazing.
artistic nuance to this that I kind of don't want to spoil myself for it. Because I enjoy that first read, and I've really enjoyed this reread as well. It's clearly a series I need to reread more often because I just love it.
And you find
And
different nuances, I think.
oh yeah, like on a second read, so much hits so different. Like it's not even funny. Oh, whew. I love this series so much. I just do. Okay, so I have feelings about it because I feel like Buckingham isn't as genuine as we think he is in his relationship with Richard, but Richard is completely genuine, and I do enjoy that Richard feels that genuine connection with someone because that is something that Richard needs. I wish it had been with Anne for obvious reasons because that would have simplified a lot of things for their dynamic. But at the same time, I'm okay that it's not because, you know, her dad was the kingmaker of Richard's brother. And that just already kind of puts them in a weird place. And Anne was married to his brother and all sorts of things.
Well, and I mentioned how I was very uncomfortable and how that relationship started.
Yeah.
So I'm very uncomfortable with that relationship in general, even if actual feelings are starting to develop between both sides. I think it's still not a good relationship because
It's not healthy.
that
No, I can't
it's
say
always going to be that kind of relationship, whether or not other things develop, and you
it's
can't get
always
away
gonna
from
be
that.
a not okay power dynamic between them.
Right.
Like,
And I think it's
nothing will ever
interesting.
correct it, even Richard being on the throne.
Right. And I think it's
Because
interesting
Richard
that you
knows that
mentioned.
they're there because of Buckingham.
Right. And I think it's interesting you mentioned Anne and how you were hoping for a possible relationship there. And I was in the same place, mainly because I thought it would be interesting to play with the duality of who Richard is. Because you've
And there's
already
still a
had
chance
this.
to do that a little bit with Anne now that Anne is more
Right,
okay with that idea, I
I
guess.
feel like we're always pulled in these very masculine relationships. We have this whole thing that first started out between Henry and Richard that had this like whole innocent play to it. And then we have Catsby and we have Richard where it's got this kind of quiet friendship kind of relationship pool, but it's still in a similar vein as Richard and Henry. And then we got this whole thing with Buckingham, which is ultimately going to be very destructive no matter what you do
Right.
because of how it all came together.
It would have
We never.
made more logistical sense if it had been Catesby, though,
Yeah, but
because
we never really
Catesby's
get
been
to
there from the beginning and knows everything already.
yeah, but we never get to see this like soft kind of feminine relationship, which we got a little bit with Henry, but
Right.
that was more of an innocent one, but we never got the soft feminine side where Richard got to really play with his masculine side. We're always forcing Richard to be feminine in his relationship with others. And I guess
Right.
part of that is playing off of the fact that he always has to be very masculine on the battlefield. So I guess I can kind of understand that pool. I just think it would be interesting to see Richard playing off of a woman rather than a man.
Right. And the moments that Richard does get into like a husband role with Anne, like I love the dynamic between them because Anne has always been attracted to Richard. So it's such an interesting thing. And there is a chance to still play with that a little. Like I said, we still have time. It's whether Ayakana will choose to or not. And I don't want to spoil myself and find out. But I hope that a moment is taken where they get to do that. At least for a moment. So that Richard knows what that power dynamic looks like. Because they don't really know.
Right.
So it's just very interesting in that regard. And yes. All the political machinations are going to come forward, and I'm so excited. It's going to be so good. So, volume 14 comes out, I believe, in November. I forgot to fact check myself there. Let me do that while April tells you about our October pick.
Okay, October will be back on my channel, and it's going to be on October 31st. Super excited about it because Halloween is one of my favorites. So we are going to pick up Small Favors by Aaron A. Craig. This is a Rumpelstiltskin. Is that what I decided it was?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's been forever.
Because it's not Midas. I'm pretty sure it's Rumpelstiltskin.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Rumpelstiltskin too. So, because that would make sense. Small Favors. Rumpelstiltskin. He does a thing and then wants her child, and then she has to name him. So yes. So yeah, I'm really excited. This is her second book. We've already read her first book on this channel,
which is House of Salt and Sorrows, and we both love it.
So I'm hoping we get the same vibes off of this one.
I hope so too. Wait. I'm not seeing it on the website. What? Hold on.
This isn't good. I know a lot of things are all over the place because of everything going on.
Right.
I just hope it hasn't been delayed. So we're talking 14.
October 12th. I don't know why I wasn't seeing it on Viz's site.
Okay, so that's relatively soon.
I'm going to double check Viz's site because if it's not on Viz's site, it's not coming out. Okay, it's there. It's such a different color scheme that it just took me a moment.
It's very neon.
Purple and green. Yeah. Very neon. So yes, October 12th.
Yeah, because those are the princes on the cover.
Yes. Which is an interesting choice, but I'm not in charge here. The cover for 15 looks fantastic though. Like,
oh, I missed that one.
It's a lot softer.
Well, it's interesting because whenever I hear about the princes in the tower, and everyone's always talking at the Tower of London and all of that, there's always like this. It's always Richard is the demon for doing what they did to these princes. But how the princes are portrayed in this story and the snotitude that they have. I can't think of a better word.
I don't know that there is one. That's pretty spot on. They're stubborn brats.
Oh, and they've been brought up in privilege.
They're kind of the ultimate worst.
and yeah, they've got the personalities of both their mother and their father. So, I mean, I can understand how they're portrayed that way. It's just interesting how I've always had them in my head and how history can soften some people and harden other people's, and then you get a different version of it, and it can completely switch up that dynamic there. I mean, I still don't think Richard is in the right, but at the same time, I don't think these princes are as innocent as a lot of stories
Agreed.
depict them as.
Granted, they are a victim of their circumstances, so
right.
There's only so much we can say or do about that. All right. Well, I think that's all for now. Unless there's more you needed to talk about.
Nope, and we covered all of.
I think we covered all the big key points at least.
Right.
I mean, I had bookmarks galore going on over there, so yeah, it's gonna be. Oh, I can't wait. I'm so glad it's only a couple weeks away. I thought I had a whole nother month I had to wait, so I'm here for it. As soon as I can get it in my hands, it will be devoured. I might sit in a bookstore and read it if that's how that happens. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, thank you guys for checking out this video. I appreciate that you came to watch. Make sure you're subscribed to April. She's linked down below. And next month we'll be talking about small favors on Halloween on her channel. So definitely mark your calendars. We always do it at the same time, which is 3 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Central. And I don't see that changing, even though it's Halloween, because you know, kids will trick or treat Saturday, not Sunday. So, at least here.
Oh,
So
we'll
I think,
probably have a lot of kids here on Sunday.
yeah. All right. So, anyways, thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys next month. Bye.